So the GMT 900 Chevy Silverado is a beast of a truck. It has the LS engine, which is known to last a very long time and surpass 400,000 miles. Welcome back to Watch This First. Today I'm going to go over the common issues with the Chevy Silverado from 2007 from 2014 to better educate you about your ride or your future purchase. Let's get started. So with the 5.3 liter engines, it has an AFM failure, or the active fuel management failure. This basically shuts off from it being a V8 to a 4-cylinder, shutting off 50% of the power and just dropping 4 cylinders, which does improve fuel economy, but the risk for benefit is not there. First, it can cause oil consumption, allowing more than 1 quart of oil per 3,000 miles to get past the pistons and ultimately burn up. This can cause a lot of buildup and ultimately damage the pistons and the valves due to too much buildup. The AFM lifters can also go bad and get stuck and cause misfires, or they can simply break apart, ruin the camshafts and potentially the internals of the engine due to poor quality oil or a lack of oil. So if you're burning oil and you don't keep an eye on that oil level, the lack of oil can ultimately tear apart those lifters. So if your lifter has yet to drop or fail, then you can install an AFM disabler. The disabler is basically an OB2 plugin that tells your computer to stay in V8 mode at all times. And I'll have one link down below for your convenience. It's very easy to use and there's thousands of reviews on this product, all stating that it works. Let's just say that lifter failed. You will have to install an AFM delete kit, which would require you to take apart half the motor to fix it, which is a lot of work. And that's if it didn't break apart and ruin your pistons, which most likely it hasn't, but it can still do that. Now, since we were just talking about the lifters, even the lifters on the other engines can fail. Basically, once again, due to poor lubrication. On my 4.8 liter LS in my GMT 900 Tahoe, I had a few lifters fail. Basically due to poor lubrication. Long story short, I drove it with low oil and that ultimately tore apart the lifters, probably seasoned them and scored the camshaft. If you want to learn more about what happened to me, I'll link a video down below in the description or be up here in the cards. And if your lifter has failed, it's gonna sound something like this. So basically the lifters were going bad. I could have easily just took off the heads and replaced the lifters while the engine was in the Tahoe, but that would be a waste of time if I ended up replacing the lifters and the rod bearing was actually bad. Is your stability light on? Well, most likely your steering position sensor might be failing if it's not turning back off. Basically, the sensor is connected to the steering shaft and you have to get there from underneath the steering wheel, move some plastic, disconnect the steering column and pull out the sensor. Easier said than done, but definitely possible. Is your Silverado making noise during bumps or while you're turning? Well, it could be your steering intermediate shaft. Basically, the telescoping intermediate shaft is just going bad and you have to replace it to fix the issue. Now, you can do a temporary fix and lubricate the telescoping shaft itself, and that would be located in the engine bay. These trucks can also have oil leaks. The most common one after 170,000 miles is the rear main seal. Happened to my 4.8 liter in my Tahoe. You have to remove the transmission, then you can replace the rear main seal. The oil pan gasket can leak and the valve covers can also leak. The truck can also have oil pressure issues as well. First, the oil pressure sending unit behind the intake manifold can become faulty. If your oil pressure needle is banging around like this, then most likely that's your case. And second, the oil pickup tube O-ring might be crushed or flattened, which can cause low oil pressure and prevent pressure from building up adequately throughout the rev range. If you're not idling at 35-ish PSI, you might want to take a look at that, which you can get to by removing the oil pan. So that should be done if you're already replacing the oil pan gasket. Go ahead and replace the oil pickup tube O-ring as well. It's pretty easy. And it'll save you loads of hurt down the road, because if your oil pressure is not building up throughout the rev range as it should, and it's barely building, then you can ultimately starve different parts of your engine of oil. So that's a little bit scary. And finally, the oil pump can fail. It's not as common as the other two issues, not nearly as common, but it can fail. You basically have to remove the crankshaft pulley, the front plate, and there would be the magical oil pump. Not an easy job, but definitely doable by DIY in my opinion. If you're hearing that lifter tick, but it's not a lifter tick, it could also be an exhaust leak. People get those two confused sometimes. So the exhaust leak can be leaking from the exhaust manifold, and you may very well have a broken bolt on the exhaust manifold. And I've talked about this a lot, and this basically happens to a lot of older cars because the bolts just rust out over time. The throttle body might send the code P2135, which is telling you that the throttle body is not sending proper signals, which would result in poor power and basically that thing not working properly. So you'd have to replace the throttle body, which is pretty easy. Remove the elbow from the intake and you can just remove it with just a few bolts. Super easy. The brake light switch can also fail. It would also cause the cruise control not to work. It's connected directly where the brake pedal is, and it's pretty easy to replace. So if your brake light isn't working, don't be too nervous to replace it. Super easy. And finally, door handles. They're made of cheap plastic and they can also break, and you have to remove the door panels to replace them. It's tight squeeze to replace these things, but it's definitely doable. The Chevy Silverado is a pretty reliable truck. I own the GMT 900 Tahoe and I absolutely love it. It doesn't get the best gas mileage, but it's still a very great truck. It can easily last over 400,000 miles if you take care of it properly. If you aren't going off-roading and doing crazy things, so will the transmission. But on the early GMT 900 years, the transmission is the weak link on the 4L60. If you learned something, I'll see you in the next video. If you think this will help someone out, share the video to them. That's my main goal. I want to help people. I also have other content. I basically work on cars and talk about new cars that's coming out and what I think about them with my opinion. And that's fun. This is Chris Automotivate. Always appreciate and respect one another. I'll see you next time.